All right, we live, everyone. We back. We kind of hiatus as the weather decides to hiatus, so it's just kind of how it works around here. The weather's active, we'll be active, but when it's not active, not a lot to talk about. Alrighty. Let me get one quick thing first. Let some people come on in. What's up, John? Let people come on in. That's right, we'll have to do it from here. So yeah, so basically we're just gonna talk about the upcoming. Oh yeah, no need to shy away from the Christmas music. So all we're gonna talk about is, you know, I like the upcoming pattern coming up. That's really I like the upcoming pattern, and I think it's worth talking about. I think you know, we were talking about this storm that ironically that happened today. It's kind of split into two. Basically, what happened. We talked about there's a couple different scenarios that were going to happen, and we had the second scenario happen unfold where, if we take a look back, what happened. You know, we split these two vorts, and instead of potentially, you know, big time phase going on, and, you know, maybe a big time interior snowstorm is what I think was what was possible. Instead, we have these split into two. So we had a progressive rain event on, was it Friday? I think so. And then we had, and then this thing cut a little thing right here. Our vort back down here slid back away from the flow until it got picked up again, and then we had this big old little rainstorm today for a lot of people. A little snow in Canada, but mainly just a complete rainstorm for most of the people living in the, you know, northeast area. So that's why it's been kind of uneventful. We also have we do have a southeast ridge present, and without a massive injection of cold air, without a big time, and just without a decent negative NAO in general, it's somewhat difficult. I am live on YouTube as well. Yes. While I'm doing this, no one scared me away. YouTube chat. The weather was hasn't been active, but you know, you got to wait for things to develop. You don't want to go diving into conclusions. You can watch from wherever you want. I go live on both Twitter and YouTube. You can watch from wherever you feel like you want to watch. But I'm going to dive into what excites me about the upcoming pattern. Obviously, you can see I slid into North America for a reason, but what excites me about the pattern is I like 500 vort better typically, but sometimes 500 the height anomaly maps can show a little bit better. So when we're looking at the blue here, we look at troughing, we look for, you know, our height lines come down. You can see typically, you know, the 540. We look at the 540 line a lot. Is typically something we look for a lot when we're tracking events and just setups in general in weather. It's a broad statement, but it's true. And then we look for, you know, troughs in blue, and then in the big, you know, look for troughs and low pressure in blue, and we look for high pressure in the oranges. And so that's I know that's simplistic for some people here right now, but that's kind of what we look at to try to figure out where do high pressure, where do our ridges and where do our troughs set up. So when we're diving into this is currently what we have now in pattern, but we're going to go through not just the operational. We'll go through all of our major. We'll go through our GFS. We'll go through our Canadian. We'll go through our Euro. All three operationals, which are all starting to hint on something in terms of uh, potentially sustained negative NAO, which we'll talk about that more in just a second. And also we'll look at the ensembles as well, which are all agreeing on a pretty significant and negative NAO event. And what we look at is negative NAO means we have, well, let's play it out what it means. Right, so big time Southeast Ridge just dominating. So we're probably, but the thing about this can be a little deceiving sometimes. So sometimes what I like to say before I talk about the negative NAO, no, don't worry. I'm going to talk about that. I promise. Promise. I'm going to talk about more about what negative NAO is. I was actually just going to before something else sparked my attention. So a lot of times, right? So we'll talk about this, right? Negative NAO. We got our Greenland blocking up here. I'll go further into depth in a second. I promise. But a lot of times, what can deceive people is they see these height lines, these orange or red little shades of colors right here with the contour lines that scream, well, not scream, but just say 588. Remember, we talked about typically below that 540 line is we start to look at, for potential, looking at snow events because, you got to be cold throughout the atmosphere. But sometimes it can be deceiving. So sometimes, I'm not sure what the temperature is showing right now. Hold on one second. A good dog was just dreaming right there. But let's take a look at the temperature. Maybe it adds up in this case, but a lot of times people can see the Southeast Ridge and get scared. But a lot of times, you can set up where you're pulling in with the Southeast Ridge. You can pull in this warm, moist air and also drag in the cold air. And a lot of times you can get really good warm air advection events. And we kind of actually saw that with our first snow event of the year um, back back in mid November, a couple of weeks ago. Um, so sometimes those can be kind of deceiving. And a lot of times we can get really good snowfall events from those. So don't let it fool you. So there is something I think we'll have to watch down the road for at a minimum interior snowfall. But it's too a lot of the models have been hinting on something, but that it's too early to say. We learned anybody that tried to go all in for Thanksgiving kind of learned their lesson of why you don't believe exactly what models say, like 8, 9, 10 days out. I mean, we're kind of highlighting it, so I mean, technically we weren't super wrong. It's just, and I highlighted a couple different scenarios that we were looking at. I told you it wasn't even a guarantee, and we saw one unfolded. Um, but now that I have basically basically shunted out all the Twitter crowd because the Twitter crowd wanted me to talk about one thing, which was the um, just the upcoming December pattern. But I like to give some context, give some content. That's the dog making his all-known presence on the stream. That's fine. But I like to lay a little bit of a baseline first. But what is a negative NAO? So that is a negative NAO right there. Negative NAO means we have basically, to simplify it, we have blocking over Greenland. That's what we look at. We have high pressure over Greenland. So if we get all so what happens is we can get this high pressure. I didn't draw that how I wanted to. Get this high pressure to come over Greenland and into the sometimes typically we can flood in cold air from the polar vortex a lot of times, and these big, massive negative NAO events like we potentially have upcoming here. And what happens is if it floods cold air to travel like this. And a lot of times too is what we get high pressure, we get our Canadian high pressure. That makes it much more difficult, uh, for storms to cut up like this. On this particular one, you can kind of see this is a little bit of an interior run itself because we also have blocking. Notice our high pressure. This particular, if this were developed, wouldn't be completely favorable because we have blocking here, and that now we're just steering something this way, so it's not perfect. But the idea is we're not looking at super specific semantics, especially for the long range well into December. What we have is, but notice my point is we have some ridiculous ridging here, and notice how we flood in cold air from here, from Canada into the U.S. So regardless of exactly what unfolds here, all models, it's not just the GFS. It's not just the GFS. You can take a look here, and we can see how this develops. We start to see this big time negative NAO start to develop later this week. I guess we'll say this week, 5 minutes away from this week, but into next week. And I think that 2 to 3 week time frame is what we really want to look for potentially when we start getting more invested into the winter in terms of big time snowfall events, etc. I think that's when we can start to get more invested and potentially looking at big time snow events. For now, we're just trying to figure out how exactly this is going to unfold. That was a little louder than I thought that was going to be. That's okay. Take a look at the Canadian. That's too loud. But notice, right? Notice what happens when we get this negative NAO. This is actually a pretty good pattern right here. Notice we tilt. Oh no, too skinny. Notice we flood in our cold air here. We flood in our cold air with high pressure over Greenland. And then we just need our PNA to cooperate so we don't get a super massive Pacific ridge that builds and floods in warm air. And then what happens is we can that is classic for when you have a big time Pacific ridge that floods into the U.S. You can waste your negative NAO, and then you get it's not on this specific run. It's not massive. But I'm just highlighting. You can flood warm air and surge it over, and then you get overrunning events, and that's how you get your freezing rain events in this part of the country. As we classic Canadian high pressure negative NAO, and with cold air coming in to meet the warm air surges over the mid levels, and at the surface you get cold and you get freezing rain, sleet events. That's how you get those kind of mixed events a lot of times. But I'm just highlighting that's one way you can kind of waste a negative NAO if you're trying to get big time snow. But you can see Canadian advertising this as well. If we go back to the 12Z Euro, 18Z only goes out 90 hours. It's advertising the same thing, big time negative NAO. And I like this. Typically we don't want our ridge to be completely centered like on this side of Greenland. We want it just to be on the southwest side, kind of is what we look at. Record negative NAO, not my expertise on exactly how many on the high pressure in Greenland, the statistics behind that. This I can tell you for sure. This is ridiculous negative NAO. Not, I guess for December too. This is plenty more than enough, to get into a decent snowstorm pattern. And this is kind of how this pattern itself. If I'm just looking at 500 height anomalies. I mean, I can't see what's going on at 500 volt, but you can kind of get an idea. You can connect the pieces to each other. It's a little bit of a ridge down here, but then also cold air. I like this pattern just at the surface. Massive negative NAO here. Canadian high pressure, big time high pressure. We probably have cold air meeting warm air. That screams a little bit of a snowstorm track to me down the line. If I'm getting a little personal here, I can't. I don't want a big time snowstorm to happen because I am going to be out of the state during this December 5th to December 10th timeframe. So hopefully nothing big time happens there while I'm gone. But I do like the upcoming pattern. Just anytime. Listen, a negative NAO can a lot of times cancel out a lot of things. Again, it can't cancel out a big Pacific warm air surge. It gets you freezing rain and sleet instead of rain. No streams while I'm gone. Well, I mean, if there's not a lot to track anyways, then it's not a super concern. But I'll try to. I haven't exactly figured that out yet, but be active on Twitter still. That won't be a concern. I mean, again, the negative NAO is not super confusing. It's just typically if we're in a positive NAO, that means we don't have a lot of blocking. It means we don't have a big, a lot of big time high pressure over the Greenland area. And that means typically when we have troughing, okay, imagine this. Let's break it down even simpler. Red around Greenland means negative NAO. And red means high pressure. Low pressure is not where high pressure is. So our troughing, this is our region, our high pressure, and our troughing is going to be on the other side of this. This is just how weather patterns work. Right? Because high pressure doesn't cover this whole area. That's not how it works. Where you don't have high pressure is a room for troughs to move through eventually. So we slide troughing. It's not exactly like this, but if we slide troughing here, and we create a little bit of a dip in the jet stream, this is a good pattern for that's how you can try to get a snowstorm especially in the Northeast. It's different. It's different for everywhere else in the country. Like Alaska does not benefit. Typically it's not verbatim, but typically when Alaska is warm, then the Northeast is cold. That's like super verbatim, and that shit, like I made that sound verbatim, but it's not. But just a lot of times by coincidence. I mean, it's not coincidence, but I don't have the facts and research in front of me. I just kind of know that off the top of the dome. Remember, I'm not a scientist. I'm not super smart. So this is our high pressure. So if we have Canadian high pressure in place, remember we were talking about? It can't just drive through. It's not that simple unless we had some historic, ridiculous storm. Not always. Doesn't always. Alaska doesn't. It's not always. It's not verbatim. It's just a lot of times. I've noticed it happens to work out like that. But remember, we can't just drive systems through this. So a lot of times, what happens, we have an amplified pattern, is we'll try to drive through, but we have our block, so that's gonna. Oh, well, that's a red light. So, or there's a detour. Looks like we're gonna have to take another road to get there. So it's gonna come around like that. That's not exactly, but I just want you to imagine a little bit of how this works. Right? It's got to go around. Notice Our troughing is going over. Why is it scroll again? Notice this is our pattern for where our troughs are falling. And to the north is high pressure. Right? It's not a coincidence. The pattern works with each other. When the North Pole is hot, because typically we're warming the polar vortex, and when we warm the polar vortex breaks down, wobbles, and stretches cold air, floods it down into the U.S. and on the other side as well. It's not just us, right? We're on one side of the world, but the other side of the world then gets flooded too. So we look. That's why the polar vortex runs everything. I don't want to say breaks down is a better way of putting it. It's not like glass, right? It's a centered area in the country, right? It's around this region. It's an area. It's an area, right, where winds, when it's really strong, the winds are circularly wrapping around, and then as it becomes unstable, and then warm air floods the polar vortex, then it breaks down, wobbles, and sends cold air on either side down. Now, it's not the most scientific way, but I'm not an expert of all experts, and also I don't need to be to try to simplify it to get the point across of what I'm trying to say. The polar vortex is more active. Remember, the jet stream is more active in the winter than it is during the summer. That's why severe season is less active in like August, September, November. But you can kind of sometimes see that spike, like that October, November, where there's that spike because there's still, climatology, climate, climate, climatology warm. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but still, October is warmer than it is December. So in October, November, and the jet stream starts to become more active again across the U.S. Then we start to transition and we amplify the jet stream along with it being October, November. That's kind of how you can get some early season severe setups. A lot of times in the winter we see not a lot of times not a lot of low end severe setups, but there are a lot of times they're either high end severe setups or not all that present. And like December 10th last year with the Mayfield tornado, and it wasn't just the Mayfield. There was a ridiculous amount of tornadoes because the jet stream, and that's why that's why April, May is typically that peak season. The jet stream is still active, and as we're getting more warm, that's why the spring is that peak time frame for severe weather. Could the polar vortex ever not form? I guess potentially theoretically, but it's never not happened. Could the world end tomorrow? Theoretically, that was a little dark, but theoretically it could. It's just never happened. But we're taking a look at some of the ensembles here. EPS, right? We can see, this is AT&T, not where I like it. So we start out, not in a great, not right. We're still not next week, or I guess we could say later this week, early next week. We're still probably not going to be in a super favorable pattern. This does not get the job done. This does not get the job done. We're we're probably pretty warm at this point, honestly, across most of the U.S. You can kind of see here. Yep, flooding. flooding warm air across southern, central, and eastern U.S. at this point. But we slide here, we'll notice as we transition, still present, but as the negative NEO starts to become much more dominant, you can notice start to get a little bit more favorable. And if we continue to play this out, I mean, you can't ask for much more than that. That's classic. This is, I mean, maybe a little bit further south, but this is an ensemble meet. Remember, that's a pretty good spot of where you want the center of your ridge to be right there, and followed by troughing in the U.S. That's kind of what we look for. It's kind of this helps develop this classic winter pattern. Now, what could go wrong is, remember I talked about a flood of Pacific air, or PNA. PNA. If we see a flood of Pacific warm air, or if we have a southeast ridge that is too strong, and where we're seeing overrunning event as well. Those are two ways you can get overrunning events. We're getting, it's gonna be so I think we're gonna have winter precipitation events. We're gonna have frozen precip events coming up. Early mid-December. This 2 to 3 week time frame. We're gonna have some. And how long does this stay around? Because this is models. The word retrograding has been going around a lot. I'm playing this. Technically we're in a negative NAO right now, but it's just super weak, so it's not all that present. And then we get stronger and stronger and stronger, and it kind of just sits there, and that's still going to get the job done. Theoretically, ensembles can mess around all they want. You want the official definition of retrograding? Here is the official definition of retrograding. Retrograde: having or being motion in a direction contrary to that of the general motion of similar bodies, especially east to west among the stars. There is the official definition of retrograding. Better than anything I could have given. Just messing with y'all. Not really. We take. It's not just, and the only reason I play this through, you notice this is not. 18Z, whatever. Ensembles aren't going to drastically change. Say hello to my little friend for a long time. Potentially 1 to 2 week period, maybe, of a pretty sustainable present negative NAO. Canadian ensembles. We're all honing in. You don't want to use models as gospel, because they're going to change, especially so far out. Point is, remember, this is not verbatim. This is not verbatim. So I don't want you to look at this and me go 288 hours out and then think warm air is present. Remember how I try to control the narrative the best I can. I'm not trying to inhibit free speech. I'm just trying to present accurately how the weather works. So I don't want you to get caught up in such specifics. The stuff I highlight based on what I'm showing you guys is what I want you to focus on. What I talk about when I pull this up, if it's important enough, I will talk about it on what I'm showing. I promise. Sometimes you guys like to point out things, like the person that wouldn't stop talking about rain. the person that wouldn't stop talking about rain in that like last week, and then like the storm barely even happened. That was my point. Just they didn't know what they were looking at, and they were just looking at the screen when I was trying to explain to them what was going to happen. So I don't want you guys to get caught up in remember, this isn't always verbatim. Remember I talked about in the beginning, a lot of times this can be deceiving where you can have you know red anomaly here, these red colors here, but remember with the big ridge in place, we're going to create a warm air advection event potentially. Remember, I'm self-drawing this a little bit. I mean, you don't gotta remember. We don't gotta spread hate. There's enough people that do that already. So, he can comment as much as he wants now. Again, he gets another chance. If he decides to go back to how he was doing, then we'll just go back to what happened. But if we're looking at some of the specifics a little bit, which I try not to get, I don't want to get too specific here. Oh, that would be fun. Remember we talk about 500 though here's our, this is, we want to locate our polar vortex here at 500. Is right here. So we look for wobbles in this, and we look for it to potentially stretch down. We look for cold air to flood down and create a trough is what we look for. That's kind of what we look for, right? Remember, we look for those. Remember, different kinds of troughs. We look for. Remember, this is a positively tilted trough. This is a neutral trough, and then this is a negatively tilted trough. And a lot of times, your big time snowstorms it's not every snowstorm, but a lot of times the big time snowstorms can happen on your negatively tilted troughs because you got cold air in place, especially with a negative NAO in a negatively tilted trough in a relatively, in a good position. You need to be northwest of the upper level low, which would be located at the head of the trough. We back our warm air and moisture to meet the cold air that's out ahead, and that's how we can create big time snow. It's a decent pattern. It's a decent pattern. I think there's something relatively sustainable. No, not really, because if I show you the P-type map, then you'll look at it and think it's verbatim, and I know how to distinguish what 500 says, and how to tell you guys what 500 is telling me for the storm. What does it do for me to tell you what the model is showing if the model's wrong? It doesn't. It does nothing. So I tried to provide you guys with context of what I'm seeing, how to take in that information, and based on what I've seen before, which is not 30 years of experience, but I have enough experience at this point to understand a basic level of how the atmosphere works, especially more in the wintertime than any other subject. But so I try to filter that information for you guys to best understand it, and also in a way that you can potentially look at it yourselves, and then eventually you'll be able to filter that information yourself and understand how to read 500 millibars. I think anybody that's been in here for at least a little while and have seen these streams understands 500 millibars and what this means much more than they did when they used to. which is kind of the point of what I try to do here, especially on YouTube. Um, Twitter, they take in, you can just take in the information as you want. You either follow someone or you don't follow someone on Twitter. And if you like it, if you like their stuff, then you can maybe follow them if you like it. Oh man, Lop, you're gonna you're gonna weenie out the chat there, man. Yeah, I'm glad. God, I'm glad. That's kind of the point. You can kind of, if you're passionate about this, then what are you doing? Just staying at with the surface level stuff. No pun intended, or literally, I guess you could say surface level stuff. When you can understand what's actually happening and increase your knowledge a little bit, and something you're gonna spend just as much time looking at this potentially regardless. So, bro, we talked about that last time. Yeah, it's pretty good. So, I mean, you know what? You gotta be able to remember too. It's a great pattern, but a great pattern doesn't mean nothing without a result, right? And here's the equivalent. Like you can like in basketball, the idea is the offense tries to create ball movement where you pass it around and you're trying to generate the best shot you can. Now, even if you generate a really good shot, it does not mean the ball is going to go in the hoop. And what we're trying to do here is we just care about the results. So we're trying to create the pattern that gives us the result. So our probability goes up, but it's not always a guarantee. So you kind of have to look at it in perspective a little bit always. With the weather, it's no pattern is ever a guarantee. And so we got to look for every little thing to try to connect it to how, in such a small area, how we can get a big time snowstorm. Because remember, there's this whole area, and all we care about is like this right here. That's where a quarter of the country is in this small little area. This is maybe like, I don't know, but it's not a lot of the country. I mean, I don't know. I mean, what do you expect? We're in November. I think we already did pretty well. Especially if you live on the coast, I-95, or if you live in the Mid Atlantic. If you don't live in interior, if you do not live in an interior place, I mean, I'm not sure what you're expecting in November, to be honest. There's a lot of winter. There's a lot of winter, right? We only nine inning ball game. We've only played really like an inning. I mean, technically, we haven't even started the game yet. I think I like to view it as whatever we get in from December to mid March is kind of how I look at our opportunity for the winter. Anything that comes outside of then, I view as bonus, basically. December to mid March is how I look at it. Okay, that's a go time for winter. That's what we want to take advantage. Anything outside is really bonus in my opinion, especially if you don't live in an interior location. So I already got 2 inches of snow on the year, which is pretty good. Especially the time it came. It was mid-November. I'll be all for a Jonas repeat. You can get it 100 miles north. I'll be all for it. I mean, generally speaking, too, you get that kind of pattern. It's a really good pattern. So I like the pattern. I don't want to get myself too invested, because you never want to get too invested into one solution happening. And we look for one solution. We look for snow, and that's not always what's going to happen. especially in the backyard. We all want snow in the backyard, but or if you don't have a backyard, front yard, or apartment ledge, apartment patio, whatever you have. We all will look for it, or at least most of us do. And so we're trying to look for I try to tell you what is most likely to happen, and we're trying and we'll look at different ways we can get that scenario to happen. But if we're looking at the short term, maybe a brief cool down. Actually, I'm curious about this. I think this could be interesting for some antifront snow. What is that? What is antifront snow? It is basically is we sit rain all out in front of this, all out in front of our front, and we have our front, and it's a little snow on the backside is what happens. A lot of times, a lot of people get really excited over these because the models like to hold on. But a lot of times when that front pulls through, uh, you just do not have enough moisture to get really good a good amount of snow. So a lot of times these struggle to pull through. So I learned my lesson on these a while ago. Uh, that you never want to get too excited. That's kind of what it looks like at just the P-type map level. But I'm trying to show you. You notice, and I show you P-type maps to connect it. But what happens is you get there's rain pulled up here, and then in elevations, and then on the backside you can pull in some snow. Play this out. And there's not even a ridiculous amount of cold air in place either. If this were January, maybe be a little bit, models would be having a little bit more of a field day with this. See what Canadian showing. I don't really care for the thermals, but I mean, it's a pretty strong vort, elongated. It's kind of been the story. Elongated upper level low. I'm out in the head. Not big time consolidation of our upper level low. Looks like models are in decent agreement. Euro's a little bit more broader with the trough. But what we would look for if we were trying to, we would want to consolidate. We would want to consolidate our energy a little bit more. We would want to consolidate our energy just a little bit more, and hopefully we can get a little bit more warm air to meet a little bit more cold air, and we can create a little bit more frontogenesis, and hopefully a little bit more lift in our atmosphere. But the problem is, sometimes you can lack the moisture, not dry air, in a lot of these scenarios. So it's not a classic antifront situation, but could be something to watch for some interior folks. I do have some interior folks that like to follow along. Looks like GFS is one of the more bullish ones on it, which is interesting. It's just a little bit. GFS is a little bit more consolidated. Notice it pulls in, which is not something. That's why it's a little surprising. You don't usually see the GFS as the most consolidated one, although the Canadian does whatever it wants. It's not really we're reserving a little bit more of this energy, vorticity technically, and forming a stronger upper level low, just a stronger vort max in general. Bigger storm. But I mean, in general, after this, we work. Right, this will be. I don't know if I want to call it a cutter. All right, it's kind of a cutter. But because remember, we had this. This is just a big dome of high pressure. It goes farther than that, but the screen doesn't, so it is what it is. Big dome of high pressure. get warm air to surge out in front. Um, don't have cold air locked in place. Otherwise, this would probably get sheared out, stretched out across. Maybe we get an overrunning event or something, but we don't have that. Pattern's a little bit too amplified. No blocking going on up here. Typically, we like a nice block is what we like. Nice ridge. I don't think it's a waste of snow. I think everybody has to get their snow in a season. You can't get a good pattern for the whole winter. It's not how it works, especially not anymore. Especially with temperatures, the average temperatures going up every winter. I think the new winter is going to be mild. The new winter norm is going to be milder. But when it does snow, it snows. I think that's what we're trending to. I think we're trending towards less clippers, less Alberta clippers, and we're trending in a direction where we just, when we see big time snows. And I think this winter, I remember I'm not a big winter forecast guy because whatever happens, and it's so hard to predict. I can't even tell you exactly what's going to happen 2 weeks from now. We just have a general idea, a potential general idea. I mean, stuff can change too. So it's hard to say exactly what happens every winter, but I think we're trending in a general direction where the average temps are going to continue to raise, and maybe we're not sustaining snowpack for as long as we have in past winters. But there could be periods, drastic periods. I think we're trending towards more volatility in the winters, where when it snows, it's big time snow. Our storms are, big time events. Not a lot of less clippers and more active pattern, but not necessarily a more colder pattern for throughout the winter. I mean, I say pattern, but you don't get one pattern throughout the winter, but you know what I mean. Hopefully. I didn't see that one mop. I've tried to stay out of my take on on weather Twitter over the past few days was this right here. I was gonna sneeze there for a second. Sorry. This is my summary of weather Twitter right now. La 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 la. Same. What I really wanted to do is, if Ashan's in here, he'll know what I'm talking about. The Donovan Mitchell meme. It's the same every year. It's the same stuff every year. It's the same thing every year. But every year, like every week, is kind of how it works. Any publicity is not always good publicity. Not in today's world, I promise you. We'll go through a couple tweets too of people smarter than me talking about the general pattern as well. But if you really want me to get my bottle up take on that, is people are coming too hypersensitive. It's not me trying to be like an old. I mean, I'm not even that old, but I'm not. I can't be an old head. But me sounding like an old head. It's not even like the world's changing. It's getting canceled too often. No, maybe that's just where the world's heading. Maybe we're heading in that direction, but you still have to be, the same people that want to attack others and get all sensitive in their feelings are the same ones that get mad when they get canceled for saying something that other people don't like. It's a cycle, and it doesn't matter who you are. Well, it does in a sense. The more people you have, the more attention you're going to attract. The more followers you have, the more famous. It's like the more famous you are, the more people you're going to attract in terms, regardless of good or bad. They're going to see what you're saying, see what you're doing, see what you're tweeting, etc. So the more eyes you get on your content, or yourself, your person, whatever, the more people are gonna search, dig, find up on you. So the same people that want to talk about, uh, and go after other people for stuff they don't like, are the same people that are going to complain about when it happens to them. So I think a lot of more people need to get just a little less sensitive about everything, because none of these people, I mean, you don't understand, the weather community is not as massive as people think they are. You can't just alienate everyone. There's especially, if there's not a lot of people who are in the world who are weather and sports fans. There just isn't. So if and there's actually a decent amount in the weather community who happen to be weather and sports fans. But that's, regardless of that, you're alienating other people from, that like the weather. There's not a lot of people in the world who have a genuine interest to research and study weather, and yet you alienate them because you have different, like, political views or etc. If you were just with a person, the first thing, when you wouldn't go, "Oh, who'd you vote for?" You wouldn't do that. You would try to you would try to, you say, "Oh, what's your name?" That's how you would start a conversation. But Twitter, how it works is you're supposed to assume how people are based on. It's like reading a book. When you read a book, you kind of you take in the information as you want it. Look at it like this: when you listen to a song, it's a song. You're gonna feel the lyrics differently than another person is. When you hear a song, someone may think of love and someone may think of death. It works in different ways. When you read a tweet, it's not that black and white. But when you read a tweet, you're gonna read it potentially one way. You're gonna read the tone one way, and then you may misunderstand what exactly this person is trying to say. So I think people need to grasp their head, grasp their minds around that Twitter is not real. It's not. It is. We can make it real. This is about as real as it gets, with people streaming, posting videos, etc. of themselves. Um, but Twitter is not real. So I think people got to understand that it's not. You get people are going to need to become a little less sensitive on everything, and hypocritical especially, um, because I can't understand how so many people want to alienate others that have the same interests and potentially aren't even bad people. Um, you don't know them. And you're just judging them off 140 characters. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Now, some people can go so far extreme and reveal enough about themselves where you can, okay, yeah, this makes sense. But the that that's how I view it. That's how I view everything that goes on Twitter. And people that understand, things that happened this week, you can kind of put that into context what I'm talking about. Uh, that's just where I stand. But now that I sidetracked myself for a couple of minutes, I think these tweets, I think these tweets are good, uh, good, good reference on what's going on. Notice retrograding. Good thing we typed in that definition for you guys. Um, Click on this, right? This is the Euro ensemble meme, right? It's a really good spot for a negative NAO. Typically we want this. This is the location for a negative NAO we want typically. And you bring it too far south, then we start working with suppression, which mid-Atlantic people kind of want that in between of full suppression and amplification. But southern snow folks love a suppression pattern. This is not, at least at the moment, models aren't hinting at a major suppression pattern. Whoa, 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 whoa. There you go. I mean, take a look at the mean. I mean, that's a relatively good spot. Again, the perfect spot in my not. I mean, relatively this that's the spot I like right there. That Western negative NAO where we can just get that's that ideal spot for East Coast people because you don't want blocking here. If you get blocking here, then we can just allow amplification to take place, and we cut or we get inland runners. But I think this is it was I've been starting to see the stuff over the last couple days, last few days, and models really starting to go all in terms of agreement. And so I thought it was this is worth going over. Yeah, that west based negative NEO is kind of what we look for. It's what we look for. Eric Webb with another. He was going for a different narrative, but that's beside the point. This is the 7 to 14 day mean. A little far east, but I'm being trying to be picture perfect. And it's not. You don't always need to be picture perfect, but sometimes when you're figuring out details and you need a little wobble room, sometimes you want to get this right here, just instead of a little bit farther east. At the moment it is, and it's also a very weak negative NAO. The negative NAO tends to be the talking point of the winter a lot of times. It's not always necessary for big time snowstorms. Sometimes you can get lucky. I think we've talked about this before, where blocking is not essential, but then you need perfect placement. You need perfect placement. I mean, I understand baseball really well, so I'm not sure how many of you this will make sense for, but we'll go along with it. So when you're swinging in baseball, the better swing you have, and maybe not necessarily in general, but at that moment, the better swing you have will give you a better chance to hit the baseball. But if you don't have a perfect swing at that moment, you can get lucky with your swing and still hit the baseball really hard. Barrel up baseball. You can still hit it really hard, but it's gonna be more lucky. So we cannot have a negative NAO, but then you got to get really lucky with how the jet stream works, and especially if you have no blocking and then an amplified pattern, which we typically like amplified patterns to get big time snowstorms, because typically with these big time dips in the jet stream, we see a big old jet streak. We flood in moisture. I mean, I drew a possibly tilted trough, but you get the gist. I mean, positive, neutral. WX Twitter can debate that. But we pull in, we get our warm air. Did we get it at bow? I drew that way too far. It's okay, we'll reset. Get our warm air to meet our cold air. And a lot of times you maybe don't have a great cold air spot. If cold air, you don't have a great cold air in place. Jesus, messed it up twice in a row. And so that's why you get a really amplified pattern. You can allow, regardless of cold air being in place, there's a lot of room for this to amplify as much as it wants to, or suppress itself as much as it wants to if it doesn't come together. Typically, with not a lot of blocking around, we tend to see free will, freedom of whatever it wants to do, whatever the pieces of vorticity we have to work with. And that's why there's a lot more volatility. And when I say that I wasn't the best choice, there's a lot more things that can go wrong. So the negative NAO is, a little bit more of a safety net if you want to say that. But it's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee. Not a guarantee. I didn't have any. Oh yeah, that was the last snow map. Hopefully we get to put another one of these out. We had this. It just shifted 150 miles north. We will. Hopefully we'll get another chance to put one of these out. Even if there is a snow event that I'm away for, you better bet we're still going to be making the snow map. So, but I thought this forecast worked it out pretty well. Yeah, it distracted me a little bit on that stream. But we'll do the snow map again. We won't do it every single storm, especially if there's a lot of storms in the winter, because then there's only so much time I can give out. I have more than a life than just weather for me personally. Not that weather isn't a good life, and it's not everything that it can be everything someone needs in their life, but I have to balance weather and other interests in my life as well. So no, that wasn't a 5-hour stream, but I think it was like a 3.5, 4-hour stream. That's the longest stream I've ever done in my life. It's ironic that the stream that went haywire, you guys know what I'm talking about, from like a week and a half ago or whatever, a week ago, that lake effect stream, that's ironic. That was the stream that's ever gotten the most views on my YouTube channel, ironically. And that was one of my least favorite, but dude, why, Mike, what are you doing, my man? What are you doing? Literally, you're just putting stuff out there that just doesn't make any sense. So yeah, the lake effect event was ridiculous. I think it was like 84? Was it 80? Something 82? 7 feet. It's ridiculous. And I think there was honestly that in this water tent, there was someone reported 72 inches in Natural Bridge, and then they got a band after that they sat in for hours. This band that went across here that we live streamed that band actually. So I think someone might have shot more than 7 feet. There was a place called Natural Bridge that had 72.3 before round 2 came in for them off Lake Ontario. And we never got another report from them, or at least official, that came out. And I remember we talked about how some ridiculous soundings we were looking at off, the southern band of Lake Ontario. These folks got like 2 to 3, 4 feet, like we were talking about as well. Remember, chat, we don't need to be hateful. All right, I can address that stuff. Sounding. I mean, we can look at this. We can look at the sounding. We can pull up and show you guys the setup here. We can take a look, see if we can actually get any snow on this. Here's the thing. I'm telling you. I mean, again, this isn't. Let's get radar. I mean, you wouldn't snow at that point. I mean, that'd be difficult. I mean, the radar doesn't even agree with the P-type map, but it's trying to show some snow on the back end. problem is, surface, fine. 4-degree difference between our wet bulb and our surface temp, but we're super dry here. So I would question if we would even snow right there. It's not a ridiculous dry slot, but it is. And I say dry slot, I mean it's not ridiculously dry. So you maybe be like flurries, but this is not a accumulating snow sounding. That's why I always caution these frontal snow setups tend to go south. But if we slid up towards the upper level low, even despite being on the southeast side, now that's a sounding for snow right there. Super I mean, it's the upper levels of the atmosphere was super saturated. Um, super well saturated all the way down. And this is these soundings give me a much better idea of what the GFS in these global models that maybe don't have the highest resolution. These give me a better idea of trying to understand the soundings along with 500 millibar vorticity and 700 millibars. It helps give me a better idea because you can't just look at the p-type maps, because the surface maps are just the algorithm that the coder who made the website put in to try to best depict what the dynamics in the atmosphere are showing. So there's a little bit room. There's some room. I mean, it's designed to be exactly what it's showing, and the person that codes it to get the p-type map to try to show what the other dynamics are trying to account for. If that makes any sense whatsoever, what I just said. I think it does. They're trying to get it to match. And so it's not always accurate. Is this the thing? Is like it just doesn't always match up, and it's not. I'm not like blaming the person that makes the website. That's not the point here. I'm just saying and I'm not even like talking about the person that makes these websites in general. That's not what I'm addressing here. I'm addressing the p-type maps not matching what 500 millibar, 700 millibar and sounding show. Because I'm not sure what this shows, but I take a look at this sounding. I like these wind shear values too. That's always a positive. But we're well saturated through the dendritic growth zone. We have good forcing. We have good lift in our DGZ. Cold all the way down to the surface. This is an elevated area as well. You can tell it's got some elevation in the spot, and cold all the way down. We're not going over a 0 degree line. So I would look at there. I would say our dendritic growth zone is below here. So we're well saturated in our dendritic growth zone. Good lift. And I would look at this and I would say this is a pretty good sounding for heavy snow. So Canada looks like they'll get some fun. But I will say with this event though, notice our isobars, and also notice. Remember we talked about pressure gradients before. Notice really, I mean these are even for 981. Is that 9? Yeah, it's 981. Even for 981, notice our pressure, our isobars is what is the scientific term. It's just what it is. I mean, make models great again. New models. Models are what we are. It's our job, forecaster's job, to use them as tools. But notice high pressure, creating a gradient between our high pressure and our low pressure. And in between, we get strong winds, especially on the backside. So we're pumping in cold air. It's probably some pretty decent wind chill values, if I'm guessing, across the Midwest, the upper Midwest, on the backside of this system coming up mid to late week. If I had to guess, just putting 2 and 2 together. Buying mountain snow on December 1st. I mean, depends on where. I just kind of broke that down, to be honest. Talked about it. I don't really. The frontal snow is not a really a good thing to put your money on. Really, you don't want to bet on frontal snow a lot of times. For what I described earlier is, the snow tends to dry up before it reaches the ground, and so it's not great. Not a great setup. I mean, even with elevation could help. You could get some flakes, maybe some wet snow, but I wouldn't look for any accumulating snow to take place this week, unless just based on what we looked at all those models earlier. So I don't think it looks ridiculously favorable, or even pretty favorable for accumulating snow. Just hard. The cold air rushing in from the backside dries up a lot of the moisture, and it makes it very difficult to see, any accumulating snow. However, I will say we'll probably have to look at another lake effect event with this. We look at 500. I got away from what I wanted to talk about, and why did it change? Just trying to show here. Wednesday night, Thursday. Boom, we have winds coming in here. We got vorticity to work with as well. We got energy. I would bet against 80 inches, but well, probably another lake effect event. I don't know how big exactly yet, but probably not unless we get another historic one. I don't know, something we would track, but probably another lake effect event on the backside where you got cold air rushing in. The lake's still like 40, 50 degrees, those temperatures. So they cool down some, obviously, with the colder pattern that we've had lately, relatively until this weekend. But probably some lake effect for Lake Erie, Great Lakes, and Lake Ontario. They cheating by the lakes. They that's what they're supposed to get. They average a lot of snowfall every year. A lot of snowfall every year for a reason. They take advantage of the lakes, like we take advantage of the ocean. We use the moisture that gets pulled up, and that's how we create our big snowstorms. I mean, but they can take advantage of the ocean too because they're still pretty close. So that's why they kind of get so much snowfall, because they can get some of these big dynamic snowstorms that are rain here, and then they get also lake effect events as well. Well, the nor'easter is very specific for northeast winds. I wouldn't get, if a storm isn't a nor'easter, it doesn't mean it's you can't get a big snowstorm. There's this for some reason, nor'easter just gets thrown around as a big term, but nor'easter doesn't really mean, it really doesn't mean a lot in the grand scheme of things. A lot of times you just get nor'easters because we get a negatively tilted trough, and we get winds from the northeast, and that's why they call it a nor'easter. So I wouldn't focus on the nor'easter is just a term for the news to use to try to entice the viewers. I mean, that's not the why the word is made. But if I told you something was lake effect, it would just be lake effect. If I told you something was just a nor'easter, it's just a nor'easter. It is what it is. It's not changing what it is at all. I mean, yeah, I was just kind of talking about that. I don't know if I didn't exactly go into that as deep as I could have, because I got distracted on me noticing we could have some lake effect. But what I was describing is, remember we talked about pressure gradients before. I mean, 978 low meeting a 1034 high. In between, this is a good, and you see all these we see this tight gradient with these isobars. It's the stronger the wind, the tighter the gradient, the stronger the wind is. correlate. These surface maps don't ever show it. Um, don't ever show it pretty well, but it will be there. You can kind of see it. It shows up on the ocean for some reason really well. I mean, look at strong winds too on the ocean coming off the lakes here. So I gotta imagine this is gonna be. This could be. I don't know how big, but this could be another. We could be in for another decent lake effect event to watch over the Great Lakes this weekend, or not this weekend, this week. This is definitely starting to become pretty intriguing now. But I mean, you can see it off the coastline. I mean, and all this too, right? These are just sustained winds, and it's not even picturing it perfect. But it's a lot of folks in this pressure gradient. Why does it keep doing this to me? It's a lot of folks in this pressure gradient here that are in for a sustained 10 to 20 knot winds right there. I feel like I'm bigger than the U.S. right now. Is this the U.S.? Yes, we are. Okay. Feels really broad. I mean, it does have wind. I guess we can look at. It's all right. I don't want you to. I don't want you to see what I show. This is why I censor, not censor, but I filter. Filter is the good word, the better word to use. I filter what I show you guys because I don't want you to I don't want you to see something and feel like it's gospel, because it's not. Remember, the models change. They're not always showing you what's right, what's going to happen. But I mean, I guess we can take a look. Take a look, and then I'll tell you what to make of it the best I can. Remember, I'm not a genius. I'm not a genius. Wind gusts. Can't skip Charlie Brown. I didn't like that song. No one can donate anything to me right now. Not until I hit the Charlie Brown. Not until I hit the 1,000 subscriber and whatever watch time hours. Yes, it is. But you can kind of see it. Notice how the wind coming off the lakes here. I guess you can kind of see it's fine. You can kind of see the winds coming off Lake Ontario and Lake Erie there. I mean, that screams. Could be some inland lake effects now too, potentially. I mean, obviously it comes inland, but more inland than we saw with the last event potentially. The stronger the winds, the more the snow gets pulled farther inland. Yeah, well, looks like they're projecting some strong gusts, but these aren't always verbatim. Remember, these are just what the models are trying to show. Remember, what they show here, the surface. They're trying to do best with what they show, the dynamics and everything. But so we can look at it. Canadians different as we expect. I don't know. I would look at the mean here, and I would say. How do I want to phrase this? I mean, it looks like I would at least count on a lot of people seeing 20 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts. I need it for proper analysis. I think I do just fine analysis here. If you don't like it, you don't have to watch it. It's up to you, my man. I do it how I do it. So if you don't like it, you don't gotta watch. It's fully in your hands, my man. But yeah, it's not. I mean, at a minimum, I would say a lot of people getting 20 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts. Um, this was me just remember this is not me just looking at the wind gust map and then adding it up. It's me combining what the model is showing combined with you know, the, that pretty strong pressure gradient that we were looking at. With our isobars so close together, high pressure mean low pressure, that gradient we create. So it kind of adds up. And I haven't gone dive too deep into it, but on the front, I would look for around the front too, probably some strong winds. As the front comes in, that's probably where those strongest winds in will go. So right out in front of front, wherever that occurs. I mean, I may have said here, I might not even be drawn on the right spot. Um, looks like I did. Um, it's hard with max wind gusts because it doesn't. See if I can better. Here you can really see the front here. So this is our front. It's going all the way up. So we would look for strong winds right, on this part of the front is what we would look for, and that's maybe where we could look for maybe some 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts if we're really getting ahead of ourselves. But yeah, I know I'm not even gonna bring it up. If you like what I'm talking about right now, you can enjoy it and ask questions about it. If you want to look for ways to make it better, you can voice your insight. But if you continue to voice your way to how you think it should be, and I've clearly stated of why I'm not doing that, then you're wasting your time. You're wasting your life for some reason, caring about so much about what I want and what I want to use. Should I would advise that you focus on yourself more than you focus on me. Although I am interested. At least I like to think so. You can't tell, but I'm smiling. But yeah. I think there were probably a lot of people. So I would say a lot of folks probably in for some strong winds. A lot of folks here in the central and eastern U.S. probably in for some strong winds, along with that pressure where that pressure gradient is. Um, and then along the front, along the front is where we look for the strongest winds. So wherever exactly, I mean, it's going to come across. Fronts move across. No one needs to buy me anything. But stop. This is the stuff I'm talking about. This is the stuff I'm talking about. I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm not even going to talk about that. I thought this was going to show up better, but it is what it is. Thought I was going to get something more than what I get. That's okay. Now, this is something we looked at last storm, but all right, here's our front. We're looking at 700 millibar front Genesis. Here's our front. You can see our cold air and our warm air. and you can kind of see that, when we get warm air, cold air, we create frontogenesis and we create lift in the atmosphere. Maybe you have to watch for a little bit of a squall line. And remember, that's where we talk about some of those stronger winds, those 40, 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts along the front. And then with some of those heavier rain echoes, maybe you get just a little bit stronger, maybe severe, who knows? Or can y'all stop? Like, just stop. Stop. Stop talking about weather bell, please. I mean, you can talk about whatever you want, but I told you already. I'm not buying it. Told you. We've gone over this way too many times, and it's the same person keeps bringing it up every single time. It's kind of getting annoying. This is kind of the stuff I was talking about. The stream says December pattern change incoming. Not Brady gets weather bell. No one can donate anything. I'm not even close for anybody to be able to donate anything. So that doesn't even need to be a discussion point right now. I don't want anybody donating anything. There's no need to. Remember, I'm not really a classic YouTuber. I'm not someone trying to generate a profit, really. I just do this. Just do this to do this. But yeah, you guys can ask, related questions, hopefully. Not weather bell questions, but whatever questions you. I mean, I'm pretty much. There's not a whole lot more we can dive into. It's impressive negative NAO though. Impressive. I don't let one person ruin my night. I just try to make it clear. So that's today's weather. Right? Remember this didn't quite work out. This was a split stream feature. We split these two. Vort stayed behind. I think we had some severe weather too across. This is what created those I'll say mini tornado outbreak. Um, Honestly, none of you have to be big fans. It's fine if you can just enjoy the content. It's perfectly fine. Um, but yeah, just whatever I don't got a lot more to add, to be honest. I think we covered a lot of what needed to be covered. So good job, Don. What questions you guys got? I mean, you still got people here, so what questions you guys got? Twitter or YouTube, whatever you got. I know a lot of people on Twitter just like to, you know, just listen to what's happening. And I don't blame them. But nope, not gonna work. All right, don't mind Josh Groban. Answer a lot of them. I did answer some questions. I think we covered that. I guess we'll just maybe if you guys don't think of any. Nothing is ever guaranteed, Snow. Um, Nothing is ever guaranteed, but let's go over the basics again. All right, so we covered negative NAO. We covered that positive NAO tends to mean we look at the blues. Good collab. I mean, he wasn't streaming. He's just a viewer. This wasn't a collab. He was just showing up. He was just showing up. I mean, he does his own little thing on Twitter too for more Mid-Atlantic people. Yep, you're right on it, John. Good job. So we covered the negative NAO. Do we have a lot of people? The number it gives me a little number with the person next to it, but it's never really accurate because sometimes it says like 0 people and I got like 3 different comments happening in the stream. But let's go over some of the basics. And if you have questions while I'm talking, feel free. And then we'll wrap it up after that. But negative NAO, we look at for the red, these red colors here, to put it pretty simply. We look for blocking, we look for a ridge. This is what we're looking for. This is what we're looking at. What models are trying to suggest. And we look at different kinds of negative NAOs. We have east-based, Eastern negative NAO, Western, West-based negative NAO, which tends to do better. And now I'm just drawing stuff that makes 12-year-olds laugh, but that's okay. We look for West-based negative NAOs. Typically, that's more supportive for the Eastern U.S. An East-based negative NAO is more of something we would look at for more interior snow, typically a lot of times. John does follow me. You're a little behind, that's okay. But what models are trying to suggest here, right? This is not just the GFS, not just one model. It's trying to suggest a big-time negative NAO. That means business. That means business. And this could be, it's hard to say how long it's going to last because you can only come up with so many conclusions for so long, but it looks safe to say that we're trending towards a direction where a negative, we're going to have potentially a somewhat long duration negative NAO that will sustain itself. And when I say long duration, I'm not talking months or something. I'm not even talking, like 3-4 weeks, although it could be. But we have a somewhat consistent, not consistent, that's not a word, but somewhat consistent NAO feature that we're going to be looking at for starting in December, I think. And now the key will be specifics like we talked about. Do we have an east-based? Do we have a west-based negative NAO? How strong of a Pacific ridge are we going to have? How strong of a southeast ridge? How strong of a southeast ridge are we going to have? Those are all present factors. Typically, we would look at a negative NAO, big southeast ridge. That's a lot of times that's an overrunning event and not always perfect. But there's many different ways you can get snow. There's also many different ways you cannot get snow at the same time. So it's really more ways than not you cannot get snow. It's easier to not get snow. So you got to remember that. But when you increase your probability, that's when we start generating. That's when we start generating comments, and I want to say comments, that sounded stupid, but that's when we start generating interest and engagement across Twitter, and that's when we start streaming more when we have stuff to talk about. We don't have something specific to talk about, really. We went over, like the Wednesday system, which is interesting in terms of wind, and we'll bring some cold in on the backside. Not ridiculous cold air, but some cold air and some strong winds for a lot of the country, central and eastern U.S. But nothing specific exactly I wanted to address. Just more of a general pattern. I felt like it was a good opportunity. Last few days was kind of models continuing to hone in on it, and I feel like today was a good. I don't know about breaking point day, but it was a good opportunity to be able to let you guys in on what I'm thinking, on what's happening, and regardless of what I'm thinking of, uh, what I think the models are trying to show us. It's first time here. Oh, lop a little bit. I wonder if YouTube engagement works where people you subscribe to on YouTube, if they're live in someone else's chat, I wonder if you get recommended. I'd be curious because it's not like I put any tags on this on YouTube. I just I take off the note. I take off the part where it says. Um, I take off the part where it says viewed by kids, because the kid mode, it's not more or less, are you making like bad, are you making sensitive content for younger kids. I hate kid YouTube. Like, you can't put the mini player on for YouTube. You can't. So it's weird stuff it does. Um, but yeah, that's not really important to the weather, but it's more of a me problem. I did not know that. Um, I guess that's good. Well, it's not, I guess it is good. It is good. Yeah, but for the new people here, if you're curious what I do, um, some of you already know this. I break down weather. I break down weather. I do not surface level you. I'm not a direct weather. Um, I don't know what I would say if I ever met that guy, but I'd have some questions. That'd be for sure. I try not to be too disrespectful. Although I haven't been the nicest to him, but I'm not. I'm an anti. I'm not like hate posts, but I'm the anti of what direct weather is. New here, oh, appreciate it. I appreciate it. But for you guys or girls that are new here, I do weather analysis. I break down uh, whether how you're supposed to break it down. Not that I'm a genius or anything. I just actually break down the weather, and I just don't show you P-type maps and then use Photoshop to make special graphics and hype up the weather. The weather, Jim Cantori has a great line. The weather doesn't need to be hyped up. It does that for itself. And his hype is really just his excitement over the weather. It's he's a good example of when he knows how much he needs to, I don't want to say hype, but let people know of what's going to happen. How to change voice. This is your first stream. I appreciate it. I appreciate a couple new people commenting here. But yeah, I'm not someone who hypes up the weather. I give it to you pretty straight. I don't BS you. I promise I'm not going to BS you. If I don't know something, I'll tell you I don't know it. Again, I'm not a genius. Not a genius. I'm not a degreed meteorologist. I'm nothing special. I just been following this for some years now, and I've been able to get a better understanding. I get a better understanding every year, every winter, every summer, the hurricane season. I get a better understanding, and I try to relay those thoughts. And so far, turns out I'm a decent forecaster because I take my time, and I take and focus my energy on trying to be the best I can. That's just in life. If I'm doing something I'm interested in, I'm passionate, and I'm gonna do it my best. If you told me I may not be interested, but you told me I had to clean the house, um, and there was incentive or something, I don't know. I'm gonna clean the house well. To- If I'm forecasting weather, I'm gonna do whatever I can to forecast the weather well. If I'm playing sports, I'm gonna do what I can to play sports well. Even if I'm just like if I'm watching sports, I'm gonna do what I can to best understand what I'm watching. Because I want to understand stuff at the highest form and the best to be able to understand it the best I can. I pursue perfection kind of, and sometimes it's a downfall. Sometimes it leads me to be disappointed when there's sometimes not need to be, like maybe when you're expecting 2 feet and you only get like a foot, which sounds pretentious, but for some people that don't see a lot of snow, but just kind of how I've been. I have create expectations for myself, sometimes unneeded expectations, but I expect myself to be as best as I can, and I hold myself accountable too. That's why I put out those snow map grades. California snow. I post about. So here's the thing. Here's the thing, Jake. I appreciate you coming in. You don't have to subscribe if you don't want to. Um, but I I break down. I break down. If I'm talking about one area, I'm gonna bring up a lot of times what's happening in another region of the country and how it's connected. So this is my main for forecast region. This area right here, and more specifically, this area right here. That's my main. That's my main focus. I don't know exactly where Kirkwood is. But I know that I'm assuming you live in the around the Sierras. Is what I'm guessing. You know, um, but when I talk about the weather in one part of the country, there's a good chance I'm going to talk about what's happening somewhere else and how it's connected to what's going on here. So if I'm talking about a Pacific flood of warm air from here, I was like, there's a good chance, California is going to be warm if I'm talking about that happening. So, I may not break. I probably, unless there's something ridiculous. If there's something historic happening, I'm probably going to mention it and maybe break it down. So I'm not gonna be a day-to-day local forecast guy for the West Coast. That's just not who I am. But I break down everything. I connect the stuff and how it works for this part of the country. I don't know how much snow they get. They get a lot of snow every year. The only place I know the exact numbers. Like Mount Rainier gets like 500-600 inches of snow a year, so that place would topple everything. So yeah, Jay, if you don't have to come on through, but I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. And you find it interesting, just in general how the weather works. So, but I promise I will relate and talk about stuff how it works. Like a lot of times, like not a lot of people live in Alaska, but I talked about it earlier. When Alaska, you can kind of see here, it's not. Here's a kind of an example of where that's not necessarily true. But when Alaska is warm, a lot of times the Northeast can get winter experience. Is a vague way of putting it, not verbatim. Right? You can notice I'm talking about, right? I'm talking about like the Greenland high pressure, and I'm talking about a ridge in the southeast, or I'm talking about a ridge across the Pacific, or I'm talking about massive negative EPO, right? Our Pacific, our West Coast ridging. So when I'm talking about that, and I go over that, there's a big ridge in the West Coast. That means we're going to be warm in the Western U.S. So everything's connected. Everything's connected in weather. Just like everything's connected in, just everything's connected from the mind to your body. Everything's connected um, to the weather pattern. Everything's connected. So I go over everything. Maybe not everything, but I go over everything that's necessary uh, to talk about what I want to talk about. Which I made it much more specific right there, but that's a good idea, my man. Good idea. Um, yeah. So in general, to sum up my thoughts. To sum up my thoughts, I like the pattern. If you live in the central and eastern U.S., I'd keep an eye out over the next 1 to 3 weeks for I mean that's December. You can expect it, but sometimes just it's not always perfect. It's not always perfect. I think there's actual opportunities that could present itself. It's hard to pick out specifically what's going to happen, um, but I think there are. It's hard to pick out exact opportunities we're looking at, but I think there. I like the pattern. I like the pattern. So I thought it was worth talking about, and that's what I do. I talk about what I want to talk about. We're not somewhere that's trying to create a lot of hate. We're not going to try to create a YouTube chat that gets chaotic and crazy. If you want to like the stream, you can like the stream. I appreciate it. It gets more people to come in and watch. If you want to subscribe, the same thing. I appreciate it. That means people want to stick around and watch what I'm saying. I appreciate all that stuff. But really, I'm just here to talk about the weather and give my insight. Um, that's what's going to happen. A lot of these big storms, I got to keep it more clear cut. Because a lot of people, especially on Twitter, short attention span. Because usually, if they're on Twitter, they're just scrolling. Short attention span on Twitter. So, and Twitter's how I started, and I'm loyal to to my people on Twitter because I know the people on Twitter saw something of what I'm doing. Similar to YouTube, saw something what I'm doing though, but they hit the follow button, and then they interact. And the more they interact with me, the more I get to know the people, and that's the part that separates YouTube. So yeah, Twitter's my roots. I guess technically YouTube's my roots because YouTube is how I got into this originally. But YouTube is not what YouTube is not what made me what I am. Twitter has made me more what I am. Twitter is how I started streaming. YouTube is not how I started streaming, ironically. But yeah, no, I appreciate everyone that's coming from YouTube. Um, yeah, this is not a place that I BS you. This is legitimate thoughts. I'm not here to just like troll around, mess around. I'm trying to, I do have a sense of humor, but this is my space to relay my weather thoughts and explain what I'm thinking, and sometimes interact with people that have weather thoughts as well. Yeah, and again, I try not, it's ironic. I say try not to be a source of hate, and then I crap all over him. But he does it. He does it wrong. I mean, I guess I don't know if there's a right way, but he does it for clicks. He does it for clicks. This is not a place for clicks. If I wanted to, I could Photoshop stuff and work on that to try to create revenue all I want. I'm not really worried about creating revenue. I'm worried. I don't know if I'm worried, but I focus my attention on trying to be the best I can at what I know. So I'm trying to best understand this to however I can. That's the best way I can describe it. Not a genius, but I know enough to be able to make the general public smarter on a lot of this stuff. I'm not even gonna address that, but yeah. Any final questions? Any final questions before I head off and enjoy the rest of my night? Yeah, 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 yeah. That's not how I want to. I don't want to end on that note. Yeah, I like the pattern. I think this is a good. Of course, 270 hours out. It's not going to exactly happen like that. But we went through all the models. Uh, a C note. That is the note. No, just messing. Uh, I love it. I kind of love the pattern that could be coming up. Again, it's never remember. It's never a guarantee. This is never a guarantee. It's just in general. I think this is could be a positive start to the winter though. Could be a positive start. Could be a pretty good December. When's the next stream? I don't know yet. I don't know yet. We did I don't want to say wasted one, but we used one of our bullets here, and I don't want to get redundant because if there's not a lot to talk about, there's not a lot to talk about. We could go over if the severe weather becomes interesting. Well, the severe weather is going to be interesting. We could do a severe weather stream. Problem is, I don't want to say I'm not as smart, even though I am. It's just the standard. It's a little bit harder to understand. So a lot of the severe weather. There's such specific parameters, and there's so much stuff that goes on with it. So I could do a severe weather stream, and I could give you my general knowledge, but I would feel wrong doing that, knowing there's so many. Well, listen, it's not like I don't know anything. I listen. I understand. It's not like I'm not. It's not like I'm dumb. Okay, don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm dumb on this stuff, but there's so many. I would like to phrase this. There's so many other better like severe weather folks on there, and that's a pretty tight knit chaser tornado chaser community there is on Twitter that knows so much more than me. So I would kind of be making me look like a fool a little bit. But I could do a general overview on that severe weather event if you guys want to. Um, but I have to for severe weather I have to deep dive more. I have to use a lot more time to dive into severe weather, which I can do, but um, it's more time consuming if I want to look at the pre-event stuff. That's why a lot of times I just um, post radar stuff. We're not gonna talk about Andrew Tate. We're not gonna talk about Andrew Tate. Uh, but we can talk about segueing. Great segue. We can talk about severe weather though next stream. I promise you that. We could do a severe weather stream. There's something to watch. Is it tomorrow? What's the Storm Prediction Center? It's not tomorrow. I know it isn't tomorrow. It's day 3, so it's Wednesday. So we could do not I don't know about maybe not tomorrow. We could do tomorrow. Wednesday is the day to watch. Wednesday is the day to watch. Is there a day after that too? No, it's just Wednesday. So Wednesday's the day to watch. Right? This is the same day, right? We're talking dynamic, low pressure system in the front, and out ahead of the front is our severe weather to watch. Good night. Uh, but yeah, I was just saying good night to that person. No, not not quite yet. About to happen. We're ending the stream very soon. But no, this is not what this means. This is the general outlook. This is a severe thunderstorm outlook. Typically, you will look. I would look for more. This is a hatched risk. So hatched not only means enhanced, but strong. Strong severe weather is a surface level way to put it. We can take a look at the summary. Severe thunderstorms with wind damage and tornadoes, along with some hail, will be possible. From the Sabine River Valley into the lower Mississippi Valley, into the mid Mississippi Valley on Tuesday, and then into Wednesday. Or is it Tuesday? It is Tuesday. Sorry, I said Wednesday. I was viewing it as Wednesday because I saw day 3 and it says Monday on my screen right now. So we'll get the day 2 update coming out. Shoot, probably about 20 minutes, but I won't be on for that. So we'll get more specific. So we'll get a tornado, wind, and hail probabilities rather than just thunderstorm probabilities. But I guess let's go. Actually, let's see. It'll only take a few minutes to talk about general stuff. The best way to look for. When we look for severe weather, we look for storm mode is very important. Yeah, let's go over just a couple basics before we end it. We're about to end the stream before you guys go to bed, and I go to bed a little bit later, a little bit soon, but just a few things. I promise. If you guys want to stay on, almost done. I promise. We look for storm mode is super important. What I mean by storm mode is, are we looking at are we looking at rain wrapped, where or are we looking at discrete cells? Are we looking at discrete supercells? Is there do we have imagine isolated supercells? They're not that big, but I'm just trying to. Or do we just have one convective blob? It's not as black and white, but that's one thing we look for, because discrete cells tend to mean we have we're covering less space. But where our supercells are, it can tend to be pretty strong if the environment is okay. Well, we tend to discrete cells. Are big time tornadoes are more common in discrete cells. So storm mode is very important. What we also look for is that was I think the best surface level way I could explain that. We do look at 500 millibars too. Don't get me wrong. We look at 500 millibars as well. And we can kind of notice it's a potent vort piece. Potent vort. So we look for out ahead. This is where we would look for out ahead of our trough, is where we would look for our severe weather to happen. I think we ran out of music. It's fine. We only need a couple more minutes. Where do I need? And we'll look at soundings too. We'll be looking at soundings for severe weather. If we do stream it, it feels like you guys kind of want a severe weather stream. I could be wrong, but it is going to be a pretty big outbreak. If it was like if it wasn't a super big outbreak, then we probably wouldn't do it. But given it could be a pretty, I don't want to say historic, but it could be a pretty big outbreak. So it seems relevant. But there's, I mean, like people like Reed Timmer, he does great breakdowns, and those are the people I would advise to best go to for some of that stuff. Reed Timmer is great for severe weather breakdowns. What do I need here? Here we go. Low level jet is the next thing we look for. How strong our low level jet stream is. And it's more the time frame we want. All right, notice we have some pretty strong. Our low level jet, our 850 winds here are pretty strong, so that's another thing we look for. And then we also look for instability. We look for instability as well. I need a sip of water. Instability is key. Instability is key, but I'd argue that high shear, low instability setups are bigger producers than, and that's kind of what we have. Not a ridiculous high. We don't have a super high cape event, but plenty. You can see. And remember, just because there's high cape values, that doesn't mean exactly that's where the thunderstorms. But if anywhere in around here, I don't know if I want to go that far, but anywhere in that region, we would create a surface map analysis plot where we would overlay all the best dynamics and then try to pinpoint. A lot of storm chasers do that, try to pinpoint where they want to chase. But you could just pinpoint that to potentially figure out where the models are suggesting the most favorable dynamics are being overlapped for a potential tornado outbreak. Well, there's just a few different things there and then we would look at helicity values as well. This is, this is a measure of wind, kind of. It's hard to say, but I'm sorry, I just lost my focus on Good luck, my man. Good luck. Good luck. I just completely lost my train of thought. I can't even. No. Oof. But what we look for here was with severe weather is we look for winds, right? We look for rotation in storms. Yeah, you saw that, John. We look for rotation. So we're looking for winds coming from different directions to create rotation in the atmosphere. You can kind of see here, and this is surface wind, a little bit higher up, and then higher up in the atmosphere. So this means we're creating, and this is overlaid with cape and instability. So I would look at this and I would say, where we create the most, I don't know if divergence is the right word to use here, but turning of the winds, veering of the winds in the atmosphere, along with enough instability, enough moisture. Moisture is important as well. What? I don't know it. I I'm at a loss for words right now. I'm sure this whoever planned on doing this had that exactly in mind. Um, I don't have a lost dog. I feel like I'm being trolled right now. I feel like I'm being trolled. I should have ended the stream 10 minutes ago when was supposed to. But I don't have a I don't have a lost dog. Any suggestions, John? Any suggestions? I don't know. This is an interesting moment. I want to see how this turns out, though. Kind of now. I'll play along a little bit.
Just like the ones I used to know, where those streets are,
Doggy Man Pet Supplies.
I am dreaming of a white Christmas with every Christmas paradise. May your days be merry and bright.
I
I'm dreaming of a white
hmm.
Christmas.
You know, I didn't lose my dog, so I'm curious how you guys want to help me. I heard, I heard Direct Weather lost a dog though, so you may be interested in going to his channel, and you may want to help him. There's a channel called Direct Weather, so you may want. I heard it's possible he lost his dog, so you may want to check out his channel. Yes, Direct Weather. Yes, he's not. I don't know if he's streaming right now, but his YouTube channel I hear is a yes. Yes, I'm glad I could help you guys. Probably not. He's probably not streaming right now, but he'll plenty of videos that you can help him with. Yeah, you guys help me find my dog. You did a great job. Great job. It's funny. I don't know how Twitter. For anybody that's rewatching this on Twitter right now, whether this is Monday or Tuesday, whenever you're rewatching. Yes, thank you for helping me find my dog. Um, Whoever's rewatching this, you may want to slide into the YouTube channel and look at the live chat. Though this will provide much more reference. Yep, Doggy Man team. Head over to Direct Weather. Head over to Direct Weather. Awesome. Awesome. All right, we went over what we need to go over tonight. I appreciate everyone that came in. And maybe we'll stream tomorrow. I don't. Yeah, because it is Tuesday. We maybe we'll stream tomorrow. Maybe we'll go over the severe weather. Maybe we will. Maybe we will. Yeah. What an eventful ending. Oh, I'm glad I could be of support. All right, we'll call it a stream. Appreciate everyone that came in. Have a good night, everyone. John, feel free to DM. That's all I got.